Hi, it's so exciting to see all of you. Thank you for coming out to the first one of the semester. And just a reminder, if you didn't check in, you should have already done that. Anna will be here at the corner if you need to check in the middle of it. There's a little bit of food going on still, if you are interested. And didn't you guys just eat dinner? I am amazed at how much food you all can eat. It's amazing. So, tonight we have some really exciting guests who are pretty recent graduates, actually, and I think the seniors here might have been freshmen when they were seniors. So, you may have heard their names. My phone just went off on me. Okay, so tonight we have Bobby Scanlon. He is an officer in the United States Secret Service assigned to the White House. After graduating with a BA in English Language and Literature, he went to work at Amazon before getting hired by the Secret Service. Bobby lives in Fairfax County with his wife and one child. Lizzie, you said? Yes. Lizzie. And we have Richard Blank, majored in philosophy and immediately began working in the construction industry. While doing that, he prepared to become a firefighter, which he achieved in 2019. He is now a firefighter and EMT for Prince William County. He and his wife Danielle live here in Virginia and are expecting their second child momentarily, pretty much so. All right, well, welcome them to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Richard. I know some of you, not all of you, but yeah, thanks for being here. Kristen, Tom, thanks for having me. Yeah, just this is a good opportunity. Please don't stone me if I do not the best. So I'm gonna just move this. Can everybody hear me still?
Yep.
That like unnerves me a little bit. Yeah. I'll just jump right into my history. I grew up in a big military family. We moved around a bit. We spent a lot of time in Florida and Virginia, primarily. You may know some of my siblings. Martha Blank and Michael Blank are some of my little siblings. I'm number 4 of 9. From when I was very, very little, I had military aspirations. So Dad was Navy. He was a naval engineer and diver, and just from when I was very little, the thought of being a soldier was just so cool to me. So I kind of grew up with that being my plan from when I was like 5. Fast forward a couple of years, later high school, when I had to start looking into if I was going to do college, what I wanted to do for college, kind of 2 big options popped out to me. So I was looking at here and the Naval Academy. The decision was made very easy when I was not accepted to the Naval Academy. But to be honest, before I'd gotten that letter of not acceptance from them, I knew I was going to be torn if I had been accepted to both. Because career-wise, that looked like the Naval Academy looked like a good option. But having had older siblings come here and visited here, and having gone to the summer program here, I just feel like I kind of had a sense that what Christendom had was very special. So I think long-term, it was very good for me that I ended up here. So arrived here at Christendom, immediately jumped into everything, as one does, right? Freshman year, I played soccer and rugby. I was the freshman class president, and then just, got my fingers in whatever other activity I could. Progressing down the line, I became an RA sophomore year through senior year. And then I also did school sometimes. I ended up majoring in philosophy, as was mentioned, and that had just a lot to do with the fact that I love to think, which I guess is a good thing as a rational being. But graduated with a major in philosophy, and while at Christendom, I ran into the most major hiccup in my path towards the military, which was my now wife, Danielle. So I met her freshman year, and as we kind of like got more serious, I kind of began to reconsider what my plans were. When I had planned on going into the military, I had basically wanted to do special forces and be in combat. I wanted to be deployed really as much as possible. At least that was my plan, not having done it. But when I met Danielle and started, we started really getting towards those steps of discerning marriage, I kind of realized that I didn't want to both be constantly overseas, maybe laying my life down on the line for my buddies over there, while having at the same time promised to devote my whole life to her. Not that it's an undoable thing, but it just didn't seem to fit well with those two images. So I kind of began to discern more away from that. We got engaged senior year, and so I kind of knew I had to make a decision. So when I had decided to not join the military, I tried to kind of analyze what it was about the military that I had, that kind of attracted me, kind of like what the aspects were of that job, so I could try to find it in another. And so some of the big things that popped up to me were just a job where I could be physically active, something that would just requires you to think and be on your toes, and make good decisions in the moment. And I also I've always loved the idea of excellence, I guess. How virtue isn't just a moral thing. You can be virtuous in a field. You can be excellent in a field, and I just love that concept of being really good at something. So all of those things, and then kind of on top of that, the other thing I wanted in a job was something that I could feel it just had meaning, that I could feel like I was doing a good thing with my job. So a lot of those, that kind of narrowed down a lot of jobs, I think. And the two things I was really looking at was law enforcement and firefighting. And when it came down to it, the fact that in firefighting, I could wear cool gear and run into burning buildings was yes, do that. So that got me on that path. I started my application senior year. The application it's a 6 month to a year long process. And part of that is so that they can narrow it down to make sure they get the actual employees they want. But also it's kind of like a discouragement process. So just if you actually want to be there, you'll finish the application. So I did make it. I got hired by Prince William County, which is just a little east of here. So I started their recruit school in January of 2019, graduated 6 months later. During that time, the biggest things we covered were obviously you went through your fire school and EMT school, and there was also a bit of hazmat and whatnot sprinkled in there. So graduated with all that, then went out into the field. I don't know how many of you know Dale City, but I was stationed in that area, which is inside Prince William. The way our county's set up, and I think most counties, is you won't be moved outside of the county, but they can move you around wherever in there you want, wherever in there they want. So started working at station in Dale City. I got through my rookie year at one station. They transferred me to another station where I got to go through the process of learning to drive the engine. So quick distinction that's really important to us is, so everyone refers to fire engines and fire trucks as the same thing. So a fire truck has a ladder, a fire engine has a pump on it. Does that make sense? So if you say the wrong word in the presence of some people, they might snap at you. So I was trained to drive a fire engine, which is the first step before getting to drive a fire truck. So I went through that whole process, was finally, passed my final exam for that, and then So that happened a couple months ago. Those are kind of like the big steps in my career. The other thing I've been able to do since getting out of recruit school is go back and help teach new EMTs, which has just been a really cool experience because frankly, it's kind of like being up here. Like if I'm going to go teach people something, then I want to make sure I really know what I'm talking about. So it gave me an opportunity to make sure I really know my skills. During that whole time in the career, in that career, I think I saw a lot of effects that came from my time here at Christendom. So, the sports like playing soccer and playing rugby, those like obviously translate just to like being physically fit, just mentally tough. Learning to like work with a team. Being an RA here taught me to lead people and also just how to interact with people. A lot of stuff in the EMS world is just being able to communicate with people and actually identify what's wrong and what they need. Sometimes there are things that aren't medical that's wrong with that person. And then, just my major here of philosophy. So being here kind of trained me to, think a certain way, really like delve into just topics and like learn to understand them, learning what questions to ask. And I don't know if who of you are sophomores right now? So if I'm correct, you guys have you guys read snippets of Newman's Idea of a University? Yes. In that, I remembered this. I actually looked it up for the talk because I remember him defining like the idea of a gentleman, and him saying that part of the idea of a gentleman is that he knows how to, especially when like discussing with someone or arguing with someone, he knows how to really understand what they say. So kind of like sift through all the extra and get to the heart of what they're saying. He knows the right questions to ask, and he knows how to really like grasp a concept. So I remember like when I was in recruit school, we'd be going over something like the fire tetrahedron. Like, I know you guys have heard like you need a spark and you need fuel and you need oxygen. But it gets much more involved where like what's actually happening chemically. So just oftentimes in recruit school, I just ask a lot of questions, like just a lot of like, but how? And the instructors would answer the question and be like, do you understand it? And I was like, I mean, only so much. Like, like there's always more to learn. So they would kind of get frustrated with me because I'd always just have a questioning look on my face, and they're like, are we good, Blank? Can we keep going? So at the end of recruit school, our class made every class makes like a video summarizing their time there, and at the end they flashed through photos of all the recruits, and they had like a quote from each recruit, and the quote they chose for me was, "I have a question." Anyway, back to things I got from Christendom. So obviously we go through a lot of religion here and theology, and it kind of really, like you guys have seen, it ties into everything we learn. But like one of the biggest shocks for me, at this new job was just like engaging in a secular culture. I wouldn't say I was like sheltered growing up, but still just, going from like here to being in a secular culture where, people are saying whatever they want all the time, is just like a shock. Our shifts right now are 24 hours at a time. So you're like at a station with a bunch of people who just like their basic concepts of life are different than yours. And just being like steeped in that, it's just like brainwashing sometimes. Being able to take what I learned here and go there and actually like engage with those thoughts has been really good. And also being able to like know how to research and look stuff up, because frankly, like, being in that culture led me at times to like question things I thought or question things I believed. But it was, I had like enough of a basis, and I even had like people here, like I've reached back out to like professors out here to ask them questions and be like, what about this? Because, like this has left me wondering. But I mean, it's frankly been something that's, I think at like the end of the day, has kind of like built my faith, because I've just realized just the groundlessness of a lot of theories that are floating around out there. And I think a lot of that has to do with my time here and what I learned here. I want to go now into like the kind of pros and cons of the profession of like firefighting and being an EMT. The job can be very slow sometimes. And it like really depends on like what station you're at or what county you're at. But I mean, there are some stations in our county that like certain units won't run a call all day, and part of that's based on the unit and what they're specifically designed for. But there can be that. You can also be up literally all night and not sleep for 24 hours. So there is that potential depending on what you're looking for. Something I've also just seen with a lot of the providers out in the field is we get called for some pretty silly stuff sometimes. Sometimes I am a little bit confused about what people's concept of 911 actually is. But it's easy when you're getting called for silly things to just lose your conception. Lose your compassion for the people you're there to help. And I've seen that with a lot of providers. So there is a danger there, but on the flip side, there's also like a real opportunity, for like true compassion and, like I mentioned earlier, actually getting these people what they need. Because a lot of it can be like frankly mental, what you're going for. And then, I mean, just one of the biggest things, like I mentioned earlier, was just being in a secular culture, but that's something that's very hard to avoid. And it's really, like, frankly, like not something we really should avoid. Kind of like the job is like equip yourself when and where you can, and then go out and engage with the culture. But I don't know, I just warn you all, be scared. So that's it for cons. One of the like awesome pros of the job is what you get paid to do. If you're at the station for 24 hours, so if nothing else is going on, you're getting paid to like eat, sleep, and work out. And there's also a pretty awesome schedule. It technically ends up being a 56-hour work week, but you're also only working 2 or 3 days a week. So it allows for a lot of off time and time to, like, if a lot of people in the department have side hustles or second jobs they work, or just work a lot of overtime. Also, the way my career worked in Prince William County is you get paid for your whole education. So I wasn't paying for anything. I wasn't being paid, or I wasn't paying to become an EMT, which is often the case other places. And another, I think it's like a huge pro of this job is that it's a job where you get to help people. And I remember, like, I don't know if it was junior or senior year here, and this may have been like a little bit of a savior complex on my part, but just like wanting to be the kind of person that people reach out to when they need help. When someone's like, I'm in trouble or I need this done, like, oh, maybe I'll ask Richard. Frankly, that's a lot of like what EMS and firefighting is. We're basically the people that your random citizens call because they don't know what to do. We always make fun of cops when they basically get on scene of something and they're not really sure what to do. They call us. So even cops call 911. Even cops call the firefighters when they don't know what to do. The other thing, I don't remember me mentioning excellence, like really liking the idea of striving for something and really being good at it. This job definitely provides for that. Whether it be like you're trying to save someone's life doing CPR, or trying to prevent a house from burning down, it's something that you need to be trained for and be able to execute. I remember there's a little like program we were given once we got out into the field as rookies, and there was one phrase on it. I'm trying trying to remember it. This wasn't actually something I planned on saying. But I think what it was being able to execute your skills with deadly precision. And I don't know, that phrase I love. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, on certain of these calls, like you don't really have room to mess up. You have to make the right decision, and you have to do the right thing, or someone could die. Kind of a funny, exciting example of this was the first fire I ever really did anything on. It was a while into the field. It was over a year into the field. I was driving an engine. The fire was like maybe a mile from our station. So we got there well ahead of everyone else. It was in the middle of the night. We pull into the driveway, and smoke is just like banked down, covering like the entire front lawn, where I'm leaning over the windshield, like to make sure I don't like roll over any cats or anything as I pull into the driveway. So we get there, we flake out the line, the hose line. We have terminology. So we flake out the line to the front porch. I do like all my steps. I go back to charge the line. And there's like two really basic steps when you first set up. You basically pull a lever to send water from your tank that's on the engine into the line, and then you throttle up the engine just to like pressurize it so you get a lot of pressure on the line. So I open the lever and I throttle it up, and I have this little screen on my pump panel that says low water. And I'm like, okay, you have 750 gallons sitting like over the pump. Like, I'm pretty sure we're not low on water. I checked it this morning. So I'm like, okay, I'm low on water. Maybe a valve broke somewhere. So there's another engine that at this point was pulling up behind us. I told them, I was like, send me all of your water. It's still giving me low water. I'm like, hey, now we have, whatever that is, 1,500 gallons of water, and you're still telling me you have no water. I was like, what's going on here? Other crews are pulling up on scene. We now have 3 crews sitting on the front porch, all of them without lines charged, all yelling at me, like, Blank, we need water. And I'm like, I know we need water. And so I'm running around like frantically for what seemed like forever. And I finally troubleshot it and got them water. Fire went out, nobody died. Yeah, that was very, I'm getting pumped up again just thinking about it. Yeah, like if I hadn't had like enough training on the engine and knowledge of how it's supposed to work and what might have gone wrong, things could have gone very differently. Yeah, so I guess it's just an example of, it's a job where like you need to know how to do your skills the right way. And there's not a lot of room for error, which is, you don't get those calls all the time, and that's definitely the case, but it's like, you know, my day-to-day schedule is pretty mundane, and then we'll run like one awesome call that I'm thinking about for weeks, and that has kind of kept me there, because it's not like an adrenaline junkie kind of job, but it can be at certain times, and those moments are very memorable. Just a few pieces of kind of like advice for y'all before I end. So, you know, in pursuing a career, I think that, at the very basic level, a career is, like a job is kind of like a means to an end. You got to provide for your family. But we want your job to be something that's like fulfilling to you and gives you meaning and that you like doing, right? So just, I don't know how like cliche a lot of this sounds, but just having been through the process, it makes a lot more sense to me. But just like explore your options and like keep an open mind. That doesn't mean don't do anything, but I remember in our freshman year, a lot of my classmates found jobs that they maybe hadn't considered beforehand, that they found, and I was like, oh, that's like exactly you. Like you should be doing that job, and it was really cool to see. And I think it's because they weren't like, I'm going to do this job, I'm going to do this job. They kept their minds open, and they found what seems to me at least to have been like a really good job for them. and then just, these are kind of just general principles about jobs. Like, it's what you make of it. Yeah, it's almost as simple as that. Like, any career, if you really put yourself into it, you can make very good things out of. Specifically though, with firefighting, for those of you who are interested, or is anyone here like actually interested in firefighting or being an EMT or whatnot? Yes, let me. If you want to look into that field, obviously just being like physically fit is huge. It's good to have that preparation. If you're specifically interested in firefighting or whatnot, you could volunteer, or just a lot of counties allow just for ride-along, so you can go and ride for a day and see what it's like. Another thing is just get into the hunt early, prepare early. I was kind of fortunate. I kind of switched from the military path and switched to firefighting, and I actually only applied to one county, not really thinking about it, and was fortunate enough to get hired there. But I kind of realized afterwards, after I got out into the field and started talking to people, that a lot of different counties offer different things and have different setups. So if you are interested in this field, at least look at different counties and learn what they have to offer and whatnot. And lastly, this is maybe the most stereotypical advice, but it's because it's true. Pray about it. If we're trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with our lives, but we're not including God in the conversation, it's kind of just like an exercise in frustration. And while you're here, really soak up everything you can of this Catholic culture, so you know what goodness is, what a good culture is, so you can take that out into the lion's den. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for having us. Richard, that was great. You covered a lot of topics that I was thinking about, and that's about all I could talk about. So, I was nervous originally presenting with Richard because he's a firefighter, and if there's one thing I learned this last year, nobody likes cops, everybody likes firefighters. I thought he was going to bring his fire truck, but then I realized he wouldn't do that here because everybody here knows what a fire truck looks like. So my name is Bobby. I've been with the Secret Service for 2 years in June, and I got on at a really good time. But before that, going back into kind of how Richard did, how I got here, the big thing that got me to come to Christendom was the Breathe Catholic. That was their slogan they were running with at the time, and it's critical. Once you get out in the real world, you're constantly surrounded by people who don't believe anything you do. And I was fortunate, I put off a year before coming to college, so I had a little bit of job experience outside in the real world where I was exposed to that. So I knew this was the college I needed to come to if I wanted to keep my faith. Freshman year, kind of feeling it all out, figuring out what there was here, and then sophomore year I started to get into a lot more. Worked on the play, I was on the boxing club at the time. Is that a team now? Is that anything? No? I wasn't part of that part. But I got involved in a lot while I was here. Putting it into the community is what you're going to get out of it. Sorry. Let me restart that because I didn't bring my notes. I forgot them. Originally when I came to Christendom, I was apprehensive. Really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Probably wasn't ever going to do law enforcement as a career until I kind of figured out that there's a little bit more to life. I was actually looking at being a firefighter, and then I realized I wanted to carry a gun because it's kind of cool. But there's really three things that I wanted to highlight about my opportunities here at Christendom. that I seize, that I think everybody here can seize, and nothing's given to you. You actually have to go out and earn it. Biggest thing for a career in law enforcement and first responders in general is your physical fitness. Here, I got into the gym around freshman year, started working out more, put on 10 pounds or so, and found that I really enjoyed it. This carried over into law enforcement for me because in training, which is 7 months or so, I didn't have to worry about what I was hitting on a PT score. I didn't have to log what kind of food I was eating. I didn't have to go to remedial PT in the mornings or combatives in the mornings before a test. I could study on that. And here you guys are all paying for the gym. Use it. Better yourselves physically. Get stronger. Any career you go into, if you're fit and healthy, you're going to work better. Look good, feel good, do good. Does that ring a bell? You know what I'm talking about, war poet. Communication is also, that's another critical aspect of law enforcement. Here, you're getting a liberal arts degree. That's basically, you can transfer any one of the degrees here into presenting an argument, finding out information, and bettering yourself from that. Communication is a big part of my job in the Secret Service because we're dealing with the public on a day-to-day basis. We're also dealing with a lot of different threats, and then internally, you have to be able to communicate and get people to where they need to be. Good example of that is back last summer when we're having a lot of riots around the White House. Everybody needed to know where they needed to be. We needed to have a plan structured and set up, and in order to do that, you need to be able to communicate and communicate effectively. One of the greatest things that I took from my education here was the teaching practicum. It gave me the opportunity to go and talk to, present in front of students and adapt to how they learned, what they understood. Like somebody, they might be more of a tactile learner. They have to get hands-on. Other people, they listen. Others, they need to write it down. Others can just read it. Every one of you in this room learns differently. If you were to try and teach somebody how you learn, they might not get it. By going to the teaching practicum and doing that for a whole semester, I actually had the opportunity to build my portfolio and repertoire of how I learned to teach. And if you want to be any sort of teacher, management, law enforcement, any leader in your community, you need to be able to communicate to any given person on any different level. One of the other things that I really found beneficial here at Christendom is the opportunities you have to be a part of your community. As a law enforcement officer, your job is to interject yourself into a community either during crisis or just on your day-to-day. Giving directions, helping somebody figure out where they're going, or responding to a critical incident, whatever that may be. While here, I took advantage of just going to Loaves and Fishes, working on different things here in the community, jumping in on an event, helping here, helping there, putting together group activities, nothing big, just kind of friend group, other people, bringing them in. And that's a big part of service, I think. If you can bring other people in, then you're reaching out. Like every day we have people come to the White House having a mental episode, something like that. And they think that they are the president's brother, sister, wife, husband, whatever. And you can't tell them no, because they're having a mental episode. And you need to be able to see that person as a person. Like, you need to see Christ in that person. If you don't have that compassion, then being a first responder probably is not for you. Ways you can build that, though, are by volunteering, going out into your community, getting outside of your comfort zone. I know right now it's kind of hard with COVID, but when I was here, there were a group of students that would go to nursing homes and just visit with elderly people. They would talk to them about their lives, share with them what's going on, and treat them like people. Because by and large, they're just another person that I have to take care of. Anybody have family in nursing, medical field at all? They're there to help people, right? That's their calling. And I think particularly in law enforcement, anybody that gets into it to help people. That's why I got into it. I got into it because I wanted to be a servant. I also wanted to know how to protect my family better. Because growing up with my dad in the Army, that was kind of a big thing to me. I always felt safe at home. Imagine you did. And having that security growing up was such a comfort. I was never scared at night. I wanted to provide that for my children as well. And I knew that by going through a law enforcement academy, I'd be able to do that for them. It's kind of hard to talk about a lot of what I do up here because a lot of it's classified. So I'm kind of steering here and there. I'm like, oh, I can't talk about that, can't talk about that. But if you guys have questions, I'm going to stick around afterwards until you don't have questions anymore. I can answer a lot more one-on-one with a specific pointed question. It's kind of hard to be overall what it is. And I think that's about it for me. It's kind of hard to talk about what I do. But, thank you.
All right, as usual, I would love to hear questions that you all have for them. And again, they may or may not be able to answer because it's classified. But they would love to hear what questions you have about how they got into it, if you didn't quite get your question answered with what they shared, or what it's like now. Maybe I do have a question actually about what's the future, what's the next job, what's the next step, or is there not one? So I'd love that first. But then anything else that you all want to know from them. Ryan.
What got you choosing the Secret Service over any other bureau or?
So I wanted to stay local to the area. My family lives in the area, and growing up in a military family, we bounced around my whole life. I didn't really know my cousins, grandparents, and I wanted to have that familiarity for my children, my parents, my wife's parents. I also married a Christendom girl. Shocker. But the biggest thing, I guess, for why I picked the Secret Service is it's kind of the most important law enforcement position, or law enforcement and protection position there is. We're protecting the leader of the free world. We're protecting whoever sits in the office. We're protecting the office of the president. I found that very inspirational to me. We can talk more offline if you'd like.
Anthony.
Bobby, were you an RA in my time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you guys are both RAs. So what I wanted to know is how have you applied kind of your RA training or the role of an RA to your current positions?
I'll go first. Yes. So I'm still relatively low man on the totem pole at my station, but I think a lot of what you, or I should really say a lot of leadership isn't really an authority-based thing. Like lead through example, lead with your words kind of thing. So a lot of being able to, through my experiences in RA, a lot of the way I growed through that had to do with both being able to interact with people, well, I should say, through being able to interact with people, especially when they didn't like the interaction. And still being able to grow with that and have good come out of that. I think, in my job, in a secular culture, you're going to have a lot of that. So there's that in itself. The experiences I've had of being able to lead already are, in recruit school, we have like our squad leaders, just being able to, we kind of messed up, we got in trouble a lot in recruit school, so like being willing to have that onus and, take that up the chain of command when you needed to. In the field right now, we just got a rookie at our station, so I actually finally do have that opportunity of being able to pass on what I've learned, which has actually been an awesome experience, because I'm super pumped about it, but it kind of gives you like another avenue of handing out that excitement, like, oh, I like this cool thing, here, let me show you. I think those are maybe the biggest ways. But I think it's just important to realize, for those of you who are RAs or on SAC or really have any leadership position, it's not really like the position itself that grows you, but it's how you handle the position and how you grow from it, if that makes sense.
So on that, I would agree with everything Richard said, but for me, what I took away from being an RA was being put in those tough positions, because honestly, sometimes you don't like those rules you're enforcing, and sometimes you don't like the laws that you have to enforce, but those are the laws that you're sworn to uphold. I'm trying to think of an example from my experience in terms of a tough position. One would be like last summer. You have to believe in what you're doing. Everybody's screaming at us, they're yelling at us, they're telling me, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna kill your family, yada, yada, yada. Very rude things to say. And you had to stick by your guns, stick by your morals on that. You had to stick to your values, even if those values were hard to stand up for, because everybody's pushing against you. Like, maybe everybody's doing something that's wrong, and you could be, like here, you're not really in danger of retaliation too much, but out in the real world where I work, I would take my registration and everything out of my car that had my address on it, because I didn't want somebody breaking in and coming after me because they didn't like what I stood for. So I think if you get anything from being an RA here, it's the ability to handle tough conversations, but also to be forward with yourself and honest, because if you don't believe in something, don't say that you're going to try and do it. Do what you say you're going to do and stick to that.
I know you guys have questions. Kevin?
I love this question, too. But how is it you find, handling, it's kind of like applying your Catholic morals and your foundation into your specific roles, the conflicts that come up with in terms of ethical behavior, or how did you mesh the secular world versus what your formation is? How do you reconcile these worlds?
They don't mesh. They don't. All the time I'm having conversations at work with people, specifically concerning philosophy and theology. A lot of people have a lot of questions because they don't understand it. A lot of people were raised cradle Catholic or culturally Catholic. So they don't understand why you believe what you believe. So you do the sign of the cross to say grace in the down room, and everybody's like, you Catholic? You believe in Jesus? And you're like, well, yes, actually, let's talk about it. Last couple weeks ago, I got to have a really good conversation with a gentleman about abortion. And he actually falls more onto the left side of things. He believes that abortion is right, or maybe not right, but it's not his choice. And it boiled down to, yes, maybe that is a child, but it's not my choice, I'm not doing it, so whatever. And in our position, it was pretty easy to just counter with that. Okay, so the guy that gets knifed out on the corner, do you believe that's right? You don't have anything to do with it. And after that, he was actually kind of, he wasn't 100% swayed, but he was at least listening to the conversation and probably went home and thought about it some more. And we've had other conversations since then and before that on other religious topics.
Yeah, the opportunities are definitely going to come to talk about what you believe. It's just being ready to talk about that that's hard. Yesterday at the station, I was talking to someone. He was asking me basically what a soul is, and that conversation got very quagmired very quickly. You're gonna have your opportunities. I think maybe the biggest thing to remember is that we have reality on our side. That's kind of big. If you are just obviously open about what you believe, but also, just willing to call a spade, I don't know, like a phrase that just gets tossed around all the time is well, if it makes you happy, someone throws out just really? There's something about that that's just, well, one, it's not true. Unless you ask Dr. Cutterback and he's like, well, what is happiness? It's not as basic as that. And when people use that, I've heard people use that to, justify so many things. And there's a part of you that just questions that. It's wait, it's not as simple as that. And I think if you're just, you don't need to make everything like this theological return to Catholicism, at least in discourse with people, I guess. I think there's so much that people are just not in tune with reality out there. And if you are just aware of that and willing to just point out, how little kids, when you just say something that's contradictory to something they say, they're just so upfront, wait, that's not true, that's not that way, my mom said this. I think just maybe being childlike in that way of just calling things what they are will go a long way. And it doesn't need to be this, if you dive right away into the theology of it, I think people will just label you as oh, you're that guy, and kind of sign you off. But if you can just engage with them on just a practical level, why certain things are good and other things aren't, I think it can go a long way, if that kind of makes sense.
Aiden?
Yeah, just, I don't know your thoughts on it at all. I know Richard is married with children. I'm just wondering, how does this job, this lifestyle, balance, how does it work with the family life?
It's a little tough a lot of the time. Lately, I've been working a lot of 12-hour shifts, and that doesn't include gym time. That's all outside of work for me. It doesn't include getting ready. That's being at work on the job. It's been hard, for sure. It's definitely worthwhile, and it's kind of an investment for me right now. I'm paying my dues. Like Richard, at his rookie time, we have a probation time of 3 years, and right now I'm working as hard as I can to get onto one of our tactical teams. It's a hazardous agent mitigation medical emergency response team, HAMMER. It's much shorter. It's kind of like being a firefighter, so, but it's tactical. There's a lot of hazmat stuff to that. that's what's driving me right now. Balancing in terms of family life, I don't sleep a lot. I get to go home, I spend time with my wife and daughter if they're awake still. Otherwise, it's go to bed, wake up, go to the gym, then spend time with them for a little bit, then go to work. It's hard, it's tough. The work, usually rewarding, not always, but at the end of the day, it's getting us to a point in life where we'll be able to determine how much time I spend at home.
I've actually found that the schedule we work is pretty awesome for having a family life. So you do work 24-hour shifts, so it's 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. But like I mentioned, you're only working 2 or 3 days a week, so that's at least 4 complete days home every week. If you're not working more on the side. But yeah, I've actually found that it's as long as, like my wife was good with, like handling the kids for those 24-hour blocks. I'm sure I know those aren't the easiest times for her. But I guess the trade-off has actually been really good.
I would love that schedule.
What else? Yes.
Both of you guys probably deal with a lot of stressful situations, a decent amount. How do you find you best decompress from those and actually regain energy and don't take it out on anyone?
I gotta stop doing that. Big one for me is working out, and then also, honestly, listening to different podcasts help me, because the podcasts that I choose to listen to, such as Order of Man, a little bit of Joe Rogan, I would recommend that because he gets into some ideas that maybe you don't all agree with, but it's good to hear that other side. And it just disconnects me from work and helps me focus on bettering myself and working towards something else for the future. Outside of working out in those, I actually have been able to get to Mass almost every Sunday and Holy Day, which has been great, even when traveling. And I would definitely say that continuing to go to Mass, visit the sacraments, is a great way to kind of realize that there's something more than what you're going through, and to put your trust in more than just yourself, which is really hard for me, because I joined the Secret Service, I went through 7 months of training, and then I went through various other trainings after that, and it's all kind of because I want to be the best. I want to have it in the bag, and I don't always have it in the bag. So to be able to go and just pray, be in the presence of our Lord is very helpful.
I'm trying to remember the question. Oh yes, stress. I think that it may be something about the job the kind of job I do. I think it attracts a certain type of person that when. Yeah, a lot of the calls that are pretty traumatic, they just come across as a job to do. Yeah, I won't get into particulars, but yeah, there's some calls you run that are just if you sat back and thought about them and what you're doing to this person's body, it would be oh my goodness. But it's it's just a job to do. That's what you got to do to hopefully save their life. And it just becomes very, almost just cold and precise. I think the experience that I hear a lot of people have is they run most calls like that, and there'll be 1 or 2 calls in their career that really hit them. I kind of fortunately haven't had any of those yet. And I think a lot of the ones that get to people are like pediatric calls or something, and I haven't had too many of those. So I think by and large throughout the day, like there's not a lot of stress. Like it's funny because like for us, what is someone else's very, very bad day is for us a really fun day. So there's the stressful days for us are like when we're sitting at the station and nobody's calling us. So I think, looking forward to, when those calls get to me, I think a lot of what it's going to have to come back to is, like having that like support structure in place, having those, relationships with your coworkers, so you can talk through things, because it seems like the calls that affect certain people don't affect other people. So, being able to kind of cover for the other people and then having, a good prayer life, but also a good like family and people you can talk to, I think is going to be like huge at the end of the day when those calls come.
Other questions? Yes.
More towards him. What is it like personally this past month, serving someone who is so violently opposed to everything you believe in?
I was trying to prepare for that question, and it's a hard one to prepare for. It goes back to my job as a uniformed division police officer in the Secret Service. That's my full title, is to protect the office of the president, going back to what I believe is the ultimate goal for my job. So it's to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, all enemies, foreign and domestic, so on and so forth. Right now, it's a stability, as stable as things are. Be careful about this one. I do what I do because I believe in this country, and I believe that it is the best country in the world as of right now, ever, maybe not. That remains to be seen, but it's the best we've got right now, and I want to preserve that. If that means somebody in the office that I don't agree with, that's okay, because I'm there to do a job. At the end of the day, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if that's what you wanted to hear, but that's why I do it.
Other things? Okay, well, don't forget to check in if you haven't. And there's more food, more beverages. Thank our guests kindly. They'll stay after to answer questions.